just sort of passing through. This church asked me to do revival the spring after I left for Alaska, and it would have been a good time because I was just helping another chaplain and training, but I told them no, and I never forgot it, and they never forgot it, and I started thinking about them a lot, and they asked me to come preach a revival, and I didn't want to leave my men. And then an Alaska preacher said, I want to go to that Alabama Blitz thing. And I said, you know what, I'm not going to send a man, not go with him. And so I went to Alabama Blitz, and then I drove to Pennsylvania from Alabama and preached revival, had 3 teenagers saved. And then I drove back last night, and now I'm here, and tomorrow I'm back to Alaska by tomorrow evening. So just passing through. I'll try and go. What time am I supposed to be done? What time we get in Sunday school? I'm about ashamed asking that. And nobody going to answer me? What time y'all get done? Huh? Well, I know church starts at 11, so at least I got something to go on. Anyhow, there should be 2 maps passed out. I wished I had more. I had 50-some. I printed them. It was the Sunday school at the church I did revival in, and I had 50-some left, and the Lord gave me even more to it after, as He does. It grows. And we're going to be in Genesis 14 this morning. I'm going to pray. I know I'm not preaching, but dear Lord, I ask you to help me be plain, Lord, the things you've showed me. Let it be a blessing to them like it was to me. Bless you, sweet holy name. Amen. There's a lot of information in this chapter, and for years I'd read through this, and it sort of confused me, and I'm like, God, why'd you tell us about this big war? And what's that got to do with anything? And so I would pray and study, and I'm sure there's a lot more to it than even I've found, especially if you get into the names and things, which I have not yet. And I sort of tried to look at it, but there's a lot of names and places. So here we go, Genesis 14. Now this is after, at the age of 75, Abram at the time would come out of Haran into Canaan. And then there'd be the famine. He'd go to Egypt. Him and Lot would come up. They both had a bunch of cattle, too many cattle for the spot they were in, and they divided. Lot ended up in Sodom. And Abram ended up in the plain of Mamre at Bethel. I'm sorry, at Hebron, not Bethel, Hebron. And that's where he is. At the start of this story, he's just praying, and Mamre is fatness and Hebron's fellowship. So him and the Lord's just over there, fat and happy. That's where we're at the start of the chapter. And it says, and it came to pass in the days of Amraphel, king of Shinar, Arioch, king of Elasar, Chedorlaomer, king of Elam, and Tidal, king of nations. These 4 kings. On your Middle East map, those 4 kings are 4 kings of the territory or the super kingdom of Mesopotamia. And Shinar is another name for Babylon. Some books say Amraphel was Hammurabi, who had that Hammurabi code, an eye for an eye. I don't know if it is or not. But it's also worth noting that in Mesopotamia, down at the bottom near the Persian Gulf, you'll see Ur. That's where Abraham's from. And at the top, you'd see Haran, which is where he moved to, and then finally surrendered to the Lord and came down into Canaan, which is over to the left, there on the other side of the Dead Sea, where the Lord told him to go. Oh, that's part of the territory of Mesopotamia. And here in our story, with these 4 kings, you can see them on your map. I hand wrote Shinar, and I hand wrote Elasar, and then you can see Elam down here at the Persian Gulf. And the title King of Nations, you can look at 100 maps and it'll be in 100 different spots. So they basically don't know where he is. Some say he's up there where it says Hittites. So apparently he's king of nations, so he gathered a lot of tribes or people, and he's part of that army. But anyhow, so here we go. You got the 4 kings of Mesopotamia. And it says that these made war with Bera, king of Sodom, and with Bersha, king of Gomorrah, Shinab, king of Admah, and Shemeber, king of Zeboam, and the king of Bela, which is Zoar. It says these were joined together in the vale of Sidon, which is the Salt Sea. So they're around the bottom of what would be the Dead Sea, the Salt Sea. If you turn to your other map, they're all around the base of the Dead Sea. You see Zoar there, and then it says equals the area of Sodom, Gomorrah, Admah, and Zeboam. The reason they say that is after God wiped them off the face of the map, the only one that was left was Zoar. The rest of them are covered by the Dead Sea this very morning. But before all that happened, it was a beautiful place, green place, water-fed place, and that's where Lot was living. So the Bible's telling us that those 4 kings are going to make war with those 5 kings, and the 5 kings lost. Are you with me? It says all these were joined together in the vale of Sidon, which is the Salt Sea. Now, this story is current day, and we got that praying man over by his pile of rocks in Mamre and Hebron, happy in fellowship with the Lord. But this all started 14 years prior. That's what the next verse is going to tell us. It says, 12 years they served Chedorlaomer, and in the 13th year they rebelled. And in the 14th year came Chedorlaomer and the kings that were with him, and they're going to wage a path of war. So this story starts, that war between the 5 kings and the 4 kings was 14 years earlier. And those 5 kings lost, and they've been paying taxes to Chedorlaomer for 12 years. And they said, we're going to quit paying our taxes on the 13th, and now on the 14th year, here they come. But they don't go straight to the king of Sodom and them others. They got to whoop a whole bunch of people to get there. That's probably why they quit paying their taxes. You got to go through the Rephaims and the Zuzims and the Emims to get your taxes. Are you with me? So 14 years earlier, Abraham wasn't praying by the pile of rocks in Mamre of Hebron. We know that at 86 he'd have Ishmael. This is before he has Ishmael. I don't know how many years. He's probably around the age of 80 if I was guessing. He left Haran at 75, had Ishmael at 86, and this is 14 years before he's there praying, according to that verse we just read. With that being said, while God was beckoning him, trying to get him to move, God was having heathen kings fight heathen kings and put them in subjection. He hadn't surrendered to the Lord. He hadn't moved by faith to leave Haran yet. Because if 86, even if this was the year Ishmael was born, and it wasn't, minus 14, that's what, 72? He didn't leave Haran till he was 75. He didn't surrender to the calling of God till he was 75. So while he was yet fighting, resisting, moving by faith, God was moving on his behalf. Ain't that special? And so with that being said, a funny name for it would be the Providential Preparing of Promised Places. But that's what God's going to do. He's going to start to move things. Even before Abram said yes, God's moving. So 14 years prior, they had lost the war, paid taxes 12 years, stopped on the 13th. Now in the 14th year, these kings are going to move. And at this time, Abram is in Mamre at Hebron. And he's probably praying and wondering like the whole world's coming apart. Here come these kings. It says, and in the 14th year came Chedorlaomer and the kings that were with him, and smote the Rephaims and Ashtaroth, Karnaim, and the Zuzims in Ham, and the Emims in Shava. Oh man, Kiriathaim. And the Horites in their Mount Seir, and El Paran, which is by the wilderness. And they returned and came to En-Mishpat, which is Kadesh, and smote all the country of the Amalekites, and also the Amorites that dwelt in Hazazon Tamar. So on your map, I'm trusting this by faith. This other map with Mesopotamia came out of a Bible map book. This one I found online, but based on the places we know, it looks pretty accurate. So those Mesopotamian kings on your map with the green, Elam's down here, there's Shinar, there's Elasar, and then Tidal somewhere on here. They're going to round up a posse, a big one, a big army, and they're going to ride down into Canaan land. Now your map with the arrows, before they can get to them 5 kings that owe back taxes, they're going to have to fight the Rephaims, then the Zuzims, then the Emims, then they're going to hit the Horites at Mount Seir, and then while they're at it, they're going to whoop the Amalekites and the Amorites. 6 tribes they're going to attack. That's a big army, because the Bible's, I'm going to show you later, it don't say it right here, the Bible indicates that the Rephaims and the Zuzims and the Emims are giants. Bible tells us that. I'll show you later in the message. So between them and these men they conquered 14 years earlier are tribes of giants. I've got Bible for it. I'm not just throwing stuff out. So here they come, and it says they smote all these people. And they go all the way down through there. And they returned and came to Ishmapat, which is Kadesh, and smote all the country of the Amalekites, also the Amorites that dwelt in Hazazon Tamar. So they done fought 6 groups of people, and they're on their way back. This map has them going up the west side of Jordan. I've seen other maps where they go up the east side. Basically, the Bible don't say, so different people drew it different. But they go up, they're heading back to Mesopotamia, but not yet. After they attack those 6 people, O king of Sodom and them 4 cities with him say they're weakened, they've been fighting giants, they got to be tired, they got to be weak. Let's attack. Don't that sound like a king of sin? Attack when you're weak. Which these are lost men, idol worshipers, that God's waging war, heathens against heathens. And so here they come, and it says, and there went out the king of Sodom, and the king of Gomorrah, and the king of Admah, and the king of Zeboam, and the king of Bela, the same as Zoar. And they joined battle with them in the vale of Sidom. So they're going to fight right there. And I don't know where the vale of Sidom is. It's probably covered by the Dead Sea also. It's probably near those cities. And it says, and the vale of Sidom was full of slime pits, and the kings of Sodom and Gomorrah fled and fell there. And they that remained fled to the mountains. So now we've got 5 cities, and their armies are either dead or hiding in the mountain. Well, if I was a conquering army, I would ride into town too, wouldn't you? That's what they do. And they took all the goods of Sodom and Gomorrah and all their victuals and went their way. And they took Lot, Abram's brother's son, who dwelt in Sodom, and his goods, and departed. So now Lot's a POW. And there came one that had escaped and told Abram the Hebrew, and he dwelt in the plain of Mamre, the Amorite, brother of Eshcol. So that's going to explain one of the reasons the neighbors go with him to fight. He's an Amorite. These kings smote the Amorites. They attacked his kin people too. Are you with me? So Abram's neighbor is Mamre the Amorite. He's living in his field. And these kings smote the Amorites as they passed through. So he's got a reason to fight also. So here comes Abram. It says, brother of Aner, and these were confederate with Abram. This survivor of the battle or survivor of the city shows up, and said, these kings have swept through, and they've taken your nephew captive, and all the stuff, and all the armies are scattered, and we are conquered. And Abram loved Lot, his nephew, and he's a POW to the heathen kings of the country that it took him 75 years to come out of. So he said, I got to do something. And the neighbors, one of them's an Amorite, said, they attack my people too, I'm going with you. And then he takes his trained servants. And when Abram heard that his brother was taken captive, he armed his trained servants, born in his own house, 318, and pursued them unto Dan. He's going to use a strange battle tactic, and he divided himself against them, he and his servants, by night, and smote them, and pursued them unto Hobah, which is on the left hand of Damascus. Let's see. Is Damascus on here? It sure is. They almost made it back to Damascus. And all along the way, guerrilla warfare. He divided his 318 servants, and his neighbors were with him, and they attacked left and right all the way until there was none left. So that was his battle tactics. A saved man joined the fight. Small army, they done whittled through giants. They done whittled through, at this point you have 6 and 4. They done conquered 10 people groups, and then a saved man and his 318 servants and his neighbors slaughter them. You notice that he attacked them divided and attacked them by night, and it reads to me like it was very persistent pursuit. Let's see here. And he and his servants by night and smote them. Let's see. And pursued them unto Hobah. So not only did they smite them, but they pursued. There was persistence involved to recover the lost. That's a blessing. At Hobah, which is on the left hand of Damascus, they were almost back into home turf, and he whittled on them until there was none left. And now he's going to head back to town with all these prisoners. And he brought back all the goods, and also brought again his brother Lot and his goods, and the women also, and the people. And the king of Sodom, I don't know if this is the same king. The other fell in the vale of Sodom in a slime pit. They might have nominated a new Sodomite king when that other died. If they did, it was while they were in a POW camp. Boy, ain't that the makings of a champion. But anyhow, here they come. I think it's a different fella. It don't tell his name here, but it says the other one fell in the slime pit. Sounds like it to me like he died there, but maybe not. I don't know. The king of Sodom went out to meet him after his return from the slaughter of Chedorlaomer. Maybe it's the same guy. I don't know. Bible don't say. And of the kings that were with him at the valley of Shaveh, which is the king's dale. And Melchizedek, king of Salem, the only king in this story that don't lose is Melchizedek. He's one of a kind. Actually, two of a kind that we know of. Or maybe one of a kind. I don't know. That's up for debate. But he's a king priest. And the only other one you find in your Bible is our darling Jesus. Some men think this was Jesus. Some men think this was Shem after the flood. He'd be a real old man, but possibly still living. Whoever it is, in a land of heathens, Abraham and him make eye contact and they worship the same Jesus. It don't take you long being around each other to know you're on the same team. It's rare to find another believer, and here's one. He's got all them Jebusites living around him, and he's living in Salem, which is peace, would later be Jerusalem. And he's the king of peace, and he's the priest of righteousness, I think. It says, and Melchizedek, king of Salem, brought forth bread and wine. I tried to teach this to my men. They giggled at me. I said, y'all don't think you can have church without juice and cookies, do you? I said, look here, Melchizedek's bringing bread and wine. I don't give them juice and cookies, but they ask for it. And they like special events where there's juice and cookies. Grown men acting like teenagers. It's great. But anyhow, and Melchizedek, king of Salem, brought forth bread and wine, and he was the priest of the Most High God. And he blessed him and said, Blessed be Abram of the Most High God, possessor of heaven and earth. And blessed be the Most High God, which hath delivered thine enemies into thine hand. And he gave him tithes of all. There's the invention of tithes. Proof that I got this from Jesus as proof of that. I'm going to give his portion back. It all belongs to him to prove it. Here's part of it. And the king of Sodom said unto Abram, Give me the persons and take the goods to thyself. Ain't that like sin? I want your soul. Don't care about your stuff. Abram said to the king of Sodom, I have lifted up mine hand unto the Lord, the Most High God, possessor of heaven and earth, and I will not take from a thread even to a shoe latchet, and that I will not take anything that is thine, lest thou shouldest say, I have made Abram rich, save only that which the young men have eaten, and the portion of the men which went with me, Aner, Eshcol, and Mamre. Let them take their portion. He done gave up all his stuff a long time ago. He done traded a house, wouldn't own another house till he had one built by Jesus. And so stuff didn't allure him, but old Sodom tried it anyways. He said, I don't need no stuff. I got everything I need. Last time I had too much stuff, I lost a nephew. But anyhow, that's, if correctly read, chapter 14 of Genesis. Now let's look at I read this and said, Lord, help me understand this. Why'd you put this in here? It's got to have wonderful things in it, and it probably has way more than even I see. But the Lord would finally show me some things. The first thing is right here in the text. By slaughtering those kings on their return trip, he burnt his bridge back to Mesopotamia. That probably helped his reputation. I don't know if word ever got back there or not, but he can't go back there. He done literally waged war against where he was from. Can't return to Mesopotamia. No going back. Burn his bridge by the rulers of it waging war against them. And now let's get into the even sweeter stuff. That's the affects his life. But the rest of it's not going to affect his life. He don't have no children yet in our story, not a one. As a matter of fact, chapter 15 is where God will have him look up. It says, chapter 15, verse 1 says, after these things, after all this war, he's going to sit down and God's going to tell him he's his shield and exceeding great reward. And then in that chapter, he'll have a dream about his grandchildren and great-grandchildren and great-great-grandchildren in the land of Canaan and Egypt before they finally come out led by Moses. And you got to remember, when he dreams all that and the Lord lets him dream it, he ain't got the first kid yet. 70, he's somewhere around 80, I guess, between 75 and 86. So here we go. Turn with me to Exodus. Who are these people that these heathen kings smote? Exodus chapter 2. We're doing good on time, I think. Exodus chapter 2. This is way later. This is when Moses leads God's people out of Egypt. And actually, this is I said Exodus. I'm sorry. I believe it's Deuteronomy. It is. It's Deuteronomy. I apologize. Not Exodus, Deuteronomy. So in Deuteronomy, they had come out of Egypt, wandered in the desert for 40 years, the wilderness, and now they're fixing to head toward the river, and Moses will die, and then they'll cross it under Joshua. So the route they're going to take out of Egypt, it's funny, they don't come straight up through Philistine country on this side to the promised land. They're going to go under. They're going to go by Mount Seir, which is on your map here where it says Horites. They're going to come under through Mount Seir, Then they're going to go through Moab. Then they're going to go up here to Bashan and Gilead. And then they're going to cross from the east side west and then go wage war against Jericho. Ain't that strange? Instead of going straight up, they're going to go under the bottom, and then they're going to finally cross the river there at Jericho. This is under Moses, way later. And that's what we're reading about here, and we're going to see what God did way back there. Chapter 2 of Deuteronomy. It's talking about Moses getting ready to take them through the land there. And it says... I'll just start reading. It says, Then we turned and took our journey into the wilderness, Deuteronomy chapter 2 here, by the way of the Red Sea, as the Lord spake unto me. And we compassed Mount Seir many days. And the Lord spake unto me, saying, Ye have compassed this mountain long enough, turn ye northward. And command thou the people, saying, Ye are to pass through the coast of your brethren, the children of Esau, which dwell in Seir. And they shall be afraid of you. Take ye good heed unto yourselves, therefore. Meddle not with them, for I will not give you of their land, no, not so much as a footbreadth, because I have given Mount Seir unto Esau for a possession. So what belonged to the Horites, God would clean out with these heathen kings, because he's going to give Abram's grandson, Esau, that land. God gave it to them. Ain't that a blessing? Esau despised the Lord, didn't want nothing to do with the Lord, but the Lord still loved him. And he still had a place for his people. On the street, that's the way it is. They don't know they're living off the grace of God, even if they don't know him. They don't know their hearts are thumping at his say-so, that their lungs are taking in air at his say-so. The strength of the sinew to do their job and make their wage is his say-so. They're going to despise him, and the Lord knows that. But even so, I've got a place for you. And he won't let those millions of his chosen bloodline have even a foot's width of it. Ain't that good? There's some things he's given to the lost man that it's just because he loves them, and they'll have it for a while. And that's what he did here. He gave that portion that was the Horites. Those kings cleared it out. There was some remnant, and the Esau and them would have to take the remnant of the enemy out. But that's what it says. Look what God has them do. Here are these millions, and they could take their meat from their cousins, but instead, verse 6 says, Ye shall buy meat of them for money, that ye may eat, and ye shall also buy water of them for money, that ye may drink. Ain't God good? Do business with a lost man because of a blood heritage. And then we passed from our brethren, the children of Esau, which dwelt in Seir, through the way of the plain, from Eloth and from Ezion-Geber, and we turned and passed by the way of the wilderness of Moab. And the Lord said unto me, Distress not the Moabites, neither contend with them in battle, for I will not give thee of their land for a possession, because I was given Ar unto the children of Lot for a possession. That righteous man that refused to act like he was a saved man, and his whole family would not know the Lord, even so God loved him and has a place for his two incestuous children born in sin. God says, look what it said, I've given Ar unto the children of Lot for a possession. I got a place for them. God cleared out on our map here the Horites, God removed them. The Emims, God removed them, which are in Moab territory. And it's going to tell us about them right here. It says, the Emims dwelt there in times past, a people great and many and tall as the Anakims. They were giants. God removed giants for a church-going man that quit going to church and raised a lost family to have a place to live. Ain't that something? Ain't he good? And then it goes, The Horims, I believe that's the same people as the Horites. The Horims also dwelt in Seir before time, but the children of Esau succeeded them when they had destroyed them from before them and dwelt in their stead, as Israel did into the land of his possession, which the Lord gave unto them. So there were some remnant Horites, that the Esau had to whoop, but they were weakened before he got there by these heathen kings from Mesopotamia. Ain't that interesting? So God is good to the lost man and to the man that's saved and strayed. God's good to both of them. Didn't have to be. As a matter of fact, it'd tell us that he would spare Lot because of Abraham. So Abraham's over here praying at a rock pile for children he don't even have yet, and probably for nieces and nephews of Lot that ain't been born yet. And God is putting things in place. As we continue, let's see here. Said, now rise up, and I get you over to the brook Zered. And we went over the brook Zered. And the space in which we came from Kadesh Barnea until we were come over the brook Zered was 38 years, until all the generations of the men of war were wasted out from among the hosts, as the Lord sware unto them. So it's going to take 40 years for that whole generation to die. And now they're ready to go into Canaan, except for Joshua and Caleb. Okay. So now I'm going to turn to chapter 3. On your map, by this time, they ventured through Esau's country, Mount Seir, and they paid their way. And then they moved up into Moab, which was promised the children of Lot. He said, don't mess with them. And now they're coming into what used to be Zuzim and Rephaim territory, which is Mount Gilead and Bashan. Are you with me? It says, then we turned in chapter 3 of Deuteronomy and went up the way to Bashan, and Og, the king of Bashan, came out against us, he and all his people, to battle at Edrei. And the Lord said unto me, fear him not, for I will deliver him and all his people and his land into thy hand. Thou shalt do unto him as thou didst unto Sihon, king of the Amorites, which dwelt in Heshbon. So the Lord our God delivered into our hands Og also, the king of Bashan, and all his people, and we smote him until none was left of him remaining. We took all his cities at that time. There was not a city which we took not from them, 60 cities. Wow, 60 cities in that man's kingdom. All the region of Argob, the kingdom of Og in Bashan. All these cities were fenced with high walls, gates, and bars, beside unwalled towns, a great many. We utterly destroyed them, as we did unto Sihon, king of Heshbon, utterly destroying the men, women, children of every city. But all the cattle and the spoil of the cities, it's good cattle land. This would be the land that some of the tribes would stay on, because it's good cattle land. You've heard of the bulls of Bashan? This is that area. And it says, and we took for a prey to ourselves, and we took at that time out of the hands of the two kings of the Amorites the land that was on this side Jordan, from the river of Arnon unto Mount Hermon, which Hermon the Sidonians call Sirion, and the Amorites call Shinar. All the cities of the plain, and all Gilead, and all Bashan, unto Salchah and Edrei, cities of the kingdom of Og in Bashan. For only Og, king of Bashan, remained of the remnant of giants. Behold, his bedstead was a bedstead of iron. Is it not in Rabbath of the children of Ammon? 9 cubits was the length thereof, and 4 cubits the breadth of it, after the cubit of a man. It tells us that his kingdom encompassed Bashan and Gilead. You go on down, and verse 12, I'll read just a little more. It says, in this land which we possessed at town from Aroer, which is by the river Arnon, the half Mount Gilead, and the cities thereof gave I unto the Reubenites and to the Gadites. part of the tribes would stay in that country because it's good for cattle. I always pictured it on the east side or on the west side going west to east, but they went east to west coming in. And the rest of Gilead and all Bashan, being the kingdom of Og, gave unto the half tribe of Manasseh all the region of Argob with all Bashan, which is called the land of giants. The Zuzims and the Rephaims were giants. God cleared the giants because he had plans for that land. The last giant of the Rephaims, the remnant of the Rephaims, would be Og, an OG. Original gangster. And he had a big old iron bed. There ain't no hammock for that boy. He had an iron bed. And the measurement's close to 14 foot. I seen a 7 foot tall big man in prison in Texas. That 6 foot and under iron bunk couldn't hold him either. His feet never left the ground. I guarantee you he didn't have no top bunk. He wasn't slim either. He was a heavy man and 7 foot tall. He'd lay down, his feet just stay on the floor. He'd have to roll out from under that bunk. That's a big man, half the size of this one. So the Lord cleared the giants because Abraham's children that he ain't had yet are going to live where they live. He gets just a hair sweeter. And then we'll be done. Turn with me to Genesis 37. Abraham's going to have a great-grandson named Joseph out of the line of Jacob. And Jacob's line would be the chosen bloodline, the line our Jesus would come from. So the Lord, he give all this to people kin to him, but not in the promise. They will reap of the promise if they believe, but their blood will not bring the Christ. They could believe on him even right here and be in on it. So he's going to have a great-grandson named Joseph who is going to love the Lord, and his brothers are going to hate him. In chapter 37, they're planning on killing him, of Genesis. But Reuben tells them, throw him in the pit instead. I'm paraphrasing for time's sake. And Reuben, I don't know where he goes, but he's planning on coming back and getting him later. The Bible tells us that. But them other brothers see a caravan coming. Abraham's other son he hadn't had yet is going to start a business. Ishmael will get the land on your big map down near Egypt, a wilderness area on the Sinai Peninsula, I believe. I might be speaking wrong there, but I believe that's the area he got because his mama was from Egypt. He was kicked out of his other people. His mama took him a bride from Egypt. So he might as well, if he's not accepted on his daddy's side, he might as well get close to his mama's side. She believed the Lord, but when you're an abandoned people, who do you go to? So he gets that wilderness there, and he's going to raise 12 princes. All this hadn't happened yet when God's waging this war. But his sons are going to start a trucking company. Camel Caravan Trucking. I don't know what a camel jake brake sounds like. I don't know. But they start a caravan company running from Egypt to Mesopotamia. And the Bible's going to tell us where they're coming from on their return trip to Egypt. The Bible says, let's see here, Genesis 37. I got to find it. Let's see here. They cast him into the pit, verse 25, and they sat down to eat bread, and they lifted up their eyes and looked. Behold, a company of Ishmaelites, verse 25 of chapter Genesis. Look where they're coming from. They sat down to eat bread, and they lifted up their eyes. This is long before the This is a long time before Moses would bring them out of Egypt and the giants were mostly cleared out. This is before they go to Egypt. This is how they get to Egypt. It says, and they sat down to eat bread, and they lift up their eyes and look, and behold, a company of Ishmaelites came from Gilead with their camels bearing spicery and balm and myrrh, going to carry it down to Egypt. So that's important. God cleared the giants so that Abram's first child, his children, could start a caravan company. And that's going to make a way for the second promised child. The natural son will make a way for the supernatural son. And they're going to go along and pick up Abraham's great-grandson. And they're on their way from giant country, what used to be giant country. God wiped the giants off a map. Giants, you won't find a good giant in your Bible. The Jolly Green Giant is a hoax. They ain't interested in how much broccoli you eat. They said, fee, fi, fo, fum, I smell the blood of God's only son all through the book. They hate God. You got to realize if the flesh warreth against the spirit, they are maximized flesh. They're flesh on the max. Don't have no need of spiritual things when you're that big and strong. Look at your NBA stars. Most of them. So here, God cleared giants out so that the Ishmaelites could run trade from Mesopotamia to Egypt. And God would use that to get his man to Egypt so that in a coming famine, this whole area, if you wanted to live, you had to go see a man that knew Jesus. He got a witness on the whole world years after this. And even more years after this, he had plans for that land. An eviction notice on giants. It just blesses me. I ain't figured out a way to preach it, but it blesses me that God would think ahead and he would be kind to them that don't love him. And he'd be kind to them that walked away from him and don't love him. And he'd be kind to them that love him. He'd be kind to them that love him and wasn't treated right like Ishmael. He's just kind. God's just kind. And he does the same thing in our life. I tell my men, your utterance. Abraham didn't know what all was going on. He just over there praying. Wished this war would stop. What's the point of this, God? God's doing stuff. I tell my men, you can do more praying in that prison cell. You can affect the future. You can affect your family. You can affect the world. I said, don't. The seen thing ain't the... Anything you see God do is just a fraction of what was done in private. I said, you can affect the whole world from that prison cell. When you feel like God ain't doing nothing. This man's 80 and said, you promised me kids. He don't know it. God's a clearing out patches of ground for all his kids. He's making a way that his kids are going to have biscuits. A way to get to Egypt. God's so good. If you don't think he's doing something, that's a lie of the flesh. He's always doing something. He's perfect. He'll come at a perfect time. He'll move at the perfect moment. You just be ready for your part of it because he likes to use people. Thank you. That's my Sunday school lesson. Prayer room.